And I was like, there are days now you run a business that I'm like, this is really uncomfortable. And I'm like, all right, then I'm on to something, right?
Yeah.
If your knees aren't knocking
Yep.
a little bit, you're not stretching and growing and having the impact or tapping into the possibility. And it's almost always because somewhere there is a kernel of doubt.
Yep.
I can't, I don't want to, I don't know how. The fear, the uncertainty, we have limiting beliefs. If I make more money, that's going to make me a bad person.
Yep.
If I'm more successful, I'm going to have to give up my family and never have a life. Like we talk ourselves out of greater health, wealth, and well-being before we ever give ourselves the opportunity to try. And so I think as coaches, we just sit in a space where we create some pause between the situation and the possibility and help reframe how we can redirect our thoughts, behaviors, and actions in a way that align with our goals so that, again, the tongue in the mouth and the tongue in the shoes are actually moving in the same direction.
Hello and welcome to another Top Advisor Marketing Podcast. I am your host, Matt Halloran. Now, if you don't know our guest today, you've really never been to any conference. You've been living under a rock. You're not following the right people on social media. We've got Stephanie Bogan, who is the founder of one of the top, if not the top coaching programs for financial services professionals in North America. She is killing it with results. She's an unbelievable keynote speaker. If you're looking for somebody, please make sure you hire her. But I want to welcome somebody who I adore and think is the best coach I've met. Stephanie Bogan, welcome to the show.
Oh, Matt, thank you so much. Can I just get a little copy of that for my mother-in-law?
I will sign that damn thing for your mother-in-law. How's that? So
he did well.
Okay, so this is going to be a very simple show for our listeners. You guys are going to get access to hear from Stephanie herself what is working for advisors today. And we're not just going to confine this to marketing. We're going to confine this to overall growth because that's actually what you do. You are the expert in advisor growth. So the opening question is, what are you seeing? What's working?
Well, I think a lot of the writing I'm doing, the speaking, I have 2 new keynotes. They're both on some form of what I call scaling growth. That's what I did at Genworth and United. Is what we do with our consulting clients. And I think it's because we've had years of good markets, COVID, really a lot of trends that were happening already, moving into the dawning digital age, aging advisor demographics. Now, the really cool thing is we can apply what works at scale for those largest firms because of the digitalization, right? I call it the dawning digital age. We can apply those same best practices in lifestyle practices. Think 0 to 100 million. At Limitless Lifestyle, we talk about the $1 million 100-day off practice, which is a very achievable goal. Not in 15 or 20 years, but literally like in 3 to 7, right? We see that happen. There is a model for success. If you follow that blueprint, turns out it works, right? Leaders, where we really talk about like the leaders of 7 and 8 figure firms, what I call that scale from millions to billions, right? And then ultimately in much, much larger firms. So the ideas that work to deliver deeper value, hyper efficiently, which also, Matt, I know you and I are so in tune about this, are what allow you to build a wildly successful practice that allows you to enjoy the ride and the rewards, right? So it used to be that scaling growth, and it still is the predominant state, meant 10, 20 years, grinding, gearing it out. And by the way, the big myth, it's truth, but it doesn't necessarily have to be, is that, right, margins erode as we scale up. And so does joy. Truly. So Kitsis, is one of my clients. He has been for 4 or 5 years now. We were just at a retreat together. When you get clear around how you're scaling growth, Michael shared with me, I shared this all the time. At one point, a few years in, he had sent an email saying, hey, look, I've 10x'd in, just a few short years. It's amazing the power of this work. And then I talked to him last week and he's like, yeah, I've 10x'd twice in 5 years. And so I think that really goes to the core of our work, which is best practices, right? What works in large firms works now all the way down the food chain, right? We call those the methods. But what really creates success, whether you're a small firm or a big firm, and I know you're online with this, is the mindset with which we build. we as leaders, the headspace that we bring in is the key driver, not just of our ability to scale growth. And when I talk about scaling growth, I don't just mean revenue. When I talk about scaling growth, I mean I'm scaling revenue, income, profits, value to clients, and joy. Time off, impact, freedom and flexibility. To me, success. And I think this is a trend. Like I unretired, what, 5 or 6 years ago?
Yeah.
Right? This success should be satisfying.
Yeah.
It should be life affirming, not life consuming. So I think as a profession and businesses, we're seeing scaling growth. It's the issue of the day, right? People want me to write about it. They want me to speak about it. They call me to consult about it. How do I create it? How do I manage it? The other issue is we're also at this place where we are absolutely at the precipice of there's never been a better time to be a financial advisor.
Amen to that, sister.
COVID really, I think, to where we started, that shift, the whole world went digital in a seismic shift, and really 10 years of progress caught up. And now you can scale the client experience, whether you're trying to scale from 200,000 to 1.5 million in revenue, or you're scaling from 200 million to 1 billion or billion to 10. There are key components that we absolutely know drive successful growth. And to me, successful growth is it doesn't just drive revenue. It drives owner and leader income, profits to the firm. That's what creates a sustainable business. And then ultimately freedom and flexibility, time off, and joy.
All right. So I'm not trying to steal your secret sauce, sister, but I mean, people can read your damn articles and, follow you on social and watch you speak, because you do give some of these, but we haven't distilled those on this show. So what are some of those key things that you have found? So you had introduced me to somebody quite a while ago, who actually we were at a conference together, and he was working with you. He's still working with you. And he had said that you had allowed him to see the possibilities of what he could do, but he also narrowed his focus in order to make it, but he narrowed his focus, but he expanded his market share. That doesn't make a lot of sense to people. Can you talk about that as one, because I know that's one of the things you talk about.
So when we talk about the blueprint for an effective business, success leaves clues. There's always a blueprint. So whether you're a small firm or a huge firm, we break it down into what we call 9 success shifts. One of those shifts is the income engine, and the income engine is the client base. And so if you think about the engine in a car, if that engine is performing at 50%, how likely is that race car to perform around the track relative to its potential? Right. And so the issue is in our practices, we tend to be very aggregate minded in this profession. Hey, I'm doing X, I make Y. That's pretty dang good. I'll take it. But what we don't recognize is that 40 or 50 or even 60% of what we're doing is actually underperforming. And it's the 40% that's working, that's overcompensating. And we are truly not optimizing our practices for revenue, income, profits, value to clients by a wide margin, and ultimately time off and joy. And so of the pillars, we look at 6 basic pillars: mindset and leadership. If you're not clear on what you're doing and why, and conscious and how you make decisions and align, that's where 95% of the breakdowns actually occur. I say I want one thing, but my day-to-day behavior completely exemplifies something else. And Matt, do you know what I like to call that problem? It's really simple. The tongue in your mouth and the tongue in your shoes are not moving in the same direction.
That's a Boganism. I like that. That's awesome.
This calls them Steffi shots, Steffisms, whatever they are. Steffi shots. They created like a little logo. Shot glass is crazy. Awesome. We as leaders, we have this big vision. A more and better that calls. I could build this cool little practice. I could build a huge enterprise. I can impact 1,000 lives. That's what at least in the beginning, it's what calls us to do what we do. And somewhere along the way, and we can pinpoint where this happens in the evolution. We can identify the solutions and really, make the journey a lot more efficient, a lot more effective, and a lot more enjoyable. Yeah. So to your point, strategy and positioning is the second pillar. So, hey, I serve everyone. There are firms that do that. Carson was one. We built their processes. United, right? We worked with everyone. I had to build an advice model and a planning model that could basically work with any client and any advisor and be awesome anywhere in that spectrum at a certain level. Like we really created a whole new level of client experience in what I call an advice model. There was real work that went into understanding, human behavior, training, adoption, how we architect all that. And now you can apply those principles in, a $500,000 practice that you're trying to get to 2 million. So strategy and positioning is where are we in the marketplace and how are we going to rock that spot in the marketplace? I call it letting your freak flag fly.
Sure. We call it being your own loud here. Yeah. So
if you, we take we call it the 30-day summer vacay. We take our kids, we travel a lot, but now that they're in high school and junior high, you're very limited. So we, Turkey, Greece, Egypt, this year we're going to Africa. I'm so stoked. Right. So every year we don't typically do the tours, right? But we did one last year in Turkey. Just want to make sure we got all the facts. And tour guide has the long projecting pole. And what's at the top of that long projecting pole? Like a little flag, right? A yellow flag, a red flag, right? Because the tour group has to find their tour guide. And there's usually, 500 people at the same monument. So our tour guide had one of these telescoping poles with a yellow flag and an inflatable yellow banana.
Hey, we're going to miss that.
The issue around strategy and positioning is we start building strategy. We're going to do this and we're going to do this and we're going to build our team like this and we're going to build our growth strategy like this. But we haven't clarified our actual market position. What is that space that we can own? What's our yellow banana? So that when we fly that freak flag, a client, a team member, an investor is going to look at that and be like, I was like, yellow banana, yellow banana. It's crazy, isn't it? But that's how potent strategy, positioning, and then ultimately branding and client experience can be, which in turn affects staffing and operations, the kind of clients, the kind of client experience, right? Not all staffing models are created equal. So strategy and positioning, we tend to be like, we're smart, we have great ideas, let's go do stuff. And it works. It genuinely works. And there is a way that is like 10x more efficient, more effective, and more enjoyable. And it's premised on one simple theory. When the vision is clear, the decisions are easy.
So why?
Or at least easier, right? Not without effort or economics, but if you know this is the market and the position and the client and the service and the pricing, everything else gets a lot easier.
Well, it's easy, but not simple, which is why people lean on you, because you have the systems in place to make it feel easier. Why do you think that people are so resistant to that component of your pillars?
Oh, simple. It requires choosing. Choosing requires clarity. Clarity requires confidence. And I say this with all love, the number one reason that anyone listening to this podcast, really any human on the planet, is not living up to their potential is because we suffer from a crisis of confidence.
Amen.
97% of that, according to the research, is mindset and headspace, limiting beliefs. Like we can have the geek out, you and I, man, we love that stuff. Right? Michael is not my client. Michael did not 10x twice because I am the world's most brilliant coach. I would love to believe that was true.
Well,
genuinely. But it's because he's coachable and because when you ask better questions, you get better answers. And I'm really good at asking what I call clarifying questions and reframing things. And I think if we can sit in that space where we're actually clear, what am I building and why am I building it? What's the gap between where am I at? What's it going to take to bridge that gap? What am I willing to invest in discomfort, time, energy, and capital? No one ever talks about discomfort. No. We love to talk about time, energy, and capital. You and I do. Very few people talk about the gap between where we are and where we want to be is our willingness to become more uncomfortable. One of my early mentors said to me, Stephanie, do you want to be more successful? And I said, hot damn, I do. And he said, well, then you need to get a lot more used to being uncomfortable. And I was like, there are days now you run a business and I'm like, this is really uncomfortable. And I'm like, all right, then I'm on to something,
Yeah.
right? If your knees aren't knocking
Yep.
a little bit, you're not stretching and growing and having the impact or tapping into the possibility. And it's almost always because somewhere there is a kernel of doubt.
Yep.
I can't, I don't want to, I don't know how.
Mhm.
The fear, the uncertainty, we have limiting beliefs. If I make more money, that's going to make me a bad person.
Yep.
If I'm more successful, I'm going to have to give up my family and never have a life.
Mhm.
Like we talk ourselves out of greater health, wealth, and well-being
All
before
the time.
we ever give ourselves the opportunity to try. And so I think as coaches, we just sit in a space where we create some pause
Mhm.
between the situation and the possibility and help reframe how we can redirect our thoughts, behaviors, and actions in a way that align with our goals so that, again, the tongue in the mouth and the tongue in
Yeah.
the shoes are actually moving in the same direction.
There's two things that you said there that I'm glad that I my level of crazy is in line with at least yours because first off, redirection, rephrasing, and reframing are some of the greatest tools that we
Yeah.
always use as coaches in order to help people look at things in a different way. But one of the other things that I used to say is, for everything that you want in life, you have to be willing to give up something proportionate to that
Yep.
one. And there's only 5 things: time, talents, treasures, relationships, and control. And you
Yep.
just hit on all of those, especially when it comes to control, because financial advisors generally lean towards being more controlling because they want that control because they don't want the discomfort. So I absolutely freaking love that. And that's really powerful. And the other thing, all of the stuff that you just led up to these other pillars also helps you create the content that you need to create. Because if you have a clear vision and you know who you're talking to and you know what you want, then your content begets more content, and then your marketing sings. And I know that you and I are entirely in line with the whole content marketing game. But
Yep.
okay, so I think you uh, left off at pillar number 3.
Yeah. So can I just, because it
Yeah.
made me think of something that one of I have a friend who's a really phenomenal therapist. She works with like extreme kids, autism and things like that. And we were talking about something one day and she was using, reference, and I think you'll recognize this from therapy, but she goes, well, Steph, they don't get to have that fun for free. Right. So, even, like my success or yours or some of our advisor clients, right? Like it wasn't free. Make no mistake, ladies and gentlemen, it cost them something. It just cost them something very different than what we
Yeah.
think is required. It didn't cost them 10 or 15 years of indecision, uncertainty, and
Mm-hmm.
second guessing and time and trial and error and grinding it out as a result of that lack of clarity, confidence, commitment. It cost them their indecision, their uncertainty, their hesitation. They had to step into a vision of the practice and a life income right for themselves. The why has to be bigger than the what ifs, or
Sure.
we won't create that level of change.
Yeah. All right. So when it comes to, you have a new advisor who comes to you and says, I want everything that you say that you can do, right? Because in fact, we were at a conference together and I saw advisors come up to you and say that exact same thing. Okay, I want that. Like, so they'll
I want
say,
that,
yeah,
please.
I
Yeah, I
want that. I
get
want
that. Can
that.
I just have,
Yeah.
I'll take one
Yeah.
of those. Yeah.
So what is your first step? So I'm going to have you repeat something you said earlier, because I don't want our listeners to have missed
Yeah.
that kind of inaugural component of the Limitless program. And you've said it a couple of times, but I'm just being purposefully repetitive because I think they need to hear this
Yeah.
multiple times. So step 1
Yeah.
is what?
So we start, irrespective of the program or right whether we're working one-on-one with a firm, we start with what we call base camps, right? If
Okay.
I'm going to go from here to the top of Everest, I don't go sprinting up the mountain, right? I have to acclimate, right? And then figure out my next peak, plot my course,
Mhm.
and so on. So we sort of take a mountain guide approach. Base camps to us really kind of go through those, what we call the broomstick fundamentals, the fundamentals of a successful practice: mindset and leadership, strategy and positioning, what we call a curated client model.
Mhm.
That income engine should not be 50% want, right? It
Sure.
should be optimized because that's the cash flow that runs everything else. Off of those, then we broomstick to staffing, operations, and growth.
Okay.
right? So once we have those core clarity pieces, we know precisely how to build. And to the point is, instead of spending years playing whack-a-mole, you remember that from the pizza parlor? And I like people are laughing right now. I know, because when I say that, advisors are like, "How do you know my life?" I'm like, "I've been doing this for 30 years. Your life is my life." Like, I get it, all day, every day. We don't want to play whack-a-mole. We want to be really strategic. So we start with mindset, leadership, vision. When the vision is clear, the decisions are easy. Time. Time is your greatest revenue and happiness producing asset. So there are 4 growth inhibitors to any firm, right? Individual firm, mega firm with 1,000 advisors. The 4 growth inhibitors are lead gen, helps if you have one,
Sure.
right? Closing rate, best to not have a giant sieve where half the money that you invested to get into the firm walks away. Referrals, firms simply don't optimize anywhere to the potential. The 4th has nothing to do with marketing. The 4th growth inhibitor is advisor capacity.
Oh, yeah.
And this is where, right, like my brand of like, how does she scale special? How does she create scale and still create these amazing specialized experiences, right, that have impact and value? We built this value moat and all the wonderful stuff. And it's because scaling special is a model in and of itself. And when you figure out how to scale your special, really, there is literally no limit on growth. The number 1 inhibitor to growing firms is advisor capacity. If they're growing, it means they might not be optimized, but they've got enough of 1, 2, and 3 to have a capacity problem.
Yeah.
The average advisor or advisor team is operating at 40 to 60% of client capacity. Think about the complexity, the time, the dilution, checking email 17 times a day, doing work for clients that's not really in the service model because maybe the service model isn't quite defined. Like, I could go on and on, but the point is, so we have clients, for example, who've gone through the leaders model, and I was just on a phone with one of them. I'm not kidding you. I was like, I mean, I know it works obviously every day, but you're like, oh my God, it works so good. Sometimes even I'm surprised. So they've gone through our 9 shifts over a few years. They rebranded. Their closing rate dropped because we picked a niche. They tripled down on it, like built a firm and a brand around it. They're charging flat fee minimum of $28,000, so not an easy sell. It's not like, hey, we're just going to hide that in your AUM. So we did all the branding work, built the new pipeline website, dropped to 40%, tweaked the prospect process on the website, which is what you always do, right? Round 1 laid the tracks, round 2 refined. So I was on the phone with them. Their closing rate so that took about 90 days. Their closing rate since last June is 100%. Minimum fee, $20,000 flat, like retainer. She's like, I know it's not going to last. We know it's not going to last forever, but it tells us the lead gen is working. The prospect process is working. Everything is working. So here's the killer piece. That sounds really sexy. I know, because it is. As someone who's known for scaling growth, this is where the sexy comes in. Their advisor capacity on their advisor team is between 80 and 85%. That's like gold star sterling, like very few firms get to that level. So if I have an advisor that's managing 700,000 when they could be managing 1.2 million, so 700,000 is the industry average, I'm telling you, right? Through a series, right? It's not just a body, it's the people, process, and platforms that build into that. But that $700,000 advisor can manage 1.2 million. What happened to your margin as a firm? Yeah. By the way, instead of having if you're a really large firm, people are like, oh, so instead of having 100 employees, I have 90. Well, if those employees are advisors at $150,000 a year, that's $200,000. That's $2 million I just dropped immediately to the bottom line, and I have fewer people to manage. So, I mean, the economics of this are significant and they're serious. But to our point, it starts with the mindset shift. Yeah. I can't tell you how many advisors, when I talk about scaling special, somebody says, oh, Stephanie, I can't scale up. I'll be watering down what I give my clients. Like, it's not going to be me and it's going to be personal, or I need to let each advisor figure out their own way. And I'm like, hey, everybody is a unique and beautiful snowflake. And that's the thing. We account for that. Yeah. We're just standardizing, right, what we call the CFP stuff in the most optimal way. And what happens is we're not diluting what clients get. Matt, we're 10, like literally our clients are getting
Oh yeah.
5 and 10x the value. Ready?
Yeah.
5 and 10x the value consistently, reliably, hyper efficiently, and they don't have to touch it. And they're doing it in half or more less of the time. So what used to take X number of hours takes a lot less hours. And the advisors are showing up and doing energy creating, impact adding, value adding work. They're not moving paper from one side of the desk. They're not scheduling follow ups. They're not like, oh, wait, I was supposed to talk to Bob about. They're like, my job is to show up and be awesome right now. And I have an entire system that has genuinely elevated me to where I can do that. And if you do that, you're going to have greater share of wallet. You're going to have greater referrals. You're just pick a metric. It all gets better.
Yeah. All
I
right.
know I'm like preaching, like I have to convince.
Yeah.
I know I don't
You're
love my
preaching
work.
what?
I'm so bored by it. I know.
So understanding, having a really good mindset. And one of the other things too that I want to highlight here is that period of discomfort. And I like the story that you told about the fact that their, closing ratio went way down and all of that sort of stuff. And when you start looking, and this is one of the things that you and I have spent lots of time talking about offline when we're hanging out, is the difference between running a business and running your own personal piggy bank. But we don't have time to get into that. We have time for two other quick things. Number one, how do people find you and hire you? Where should they go?
They can go to Costa Rica Park City. No, Limitless FA. Like I'm on the slopes or the beach. They can reach us at limitlessfa.life. You can get our Monday Mojo, which are actionable insights that elevate your work, wealth, and well-being. They're usually a minute or less, but you can download that and get information on the work we do.
Good. Okay. Now here's my favorite question, which is, what should I have asked you that I didn't?
Oh, gosh. That's a great question. Let's go with, okay, I'm going to give you two. One, little personal reveal. You can ask me what my mother almost named me. One of those what people don't know about you things. Yeah, I'm feeling very vulnerable today.
All right. All right.
Two, and where is the biggest opportunity for advisors to scale their success without doing a bunch of growth work stuff? Like, what's the easy lift?
All right.
That seems good.
So I'm going to take the first question offline because I actually genuinely want to know that but I don't know if our audience does, but I definitely want the second one. So what is that easy lift?
The easy lift is what we call right sizing your client base. So when we look at advisor capacity, so we have a tool we call a client profitability analysis, CPA for short, very relatable, right? Like if you showed your client base to an accountant through the lens of, right, segmentation and profitability relative to time of you and the team and expenses, what would your CPA tell you about that asset, right? Mm-hmm. So it's basically like an asset review. And what we find 85% of the time is that the low-lying fruit, right, the number one growth opportunity in a practice isn't I have to go double. It's I need to optimize the client base. I need to optimize the engine that I have, right? So I'm doing often too much for too many, for too little, for too long. I'm not charging it. I'm taking discounts. I don't honor my minimum. And all of those are ultimately are incremental crisis of confidence that compound to massive amounts of revenue, right? Like far more than people realize. And when we give the examples, everyone's like, oh my God, that cost me way more than I thought it did.
Got it.
Yep.
All right. So we're going to make sure that we have the links in the show notes as we always do. I know that our paths are going to cross again, probably very, very soon because it's going to be conference season in a month or so. And I'm sure that we will have a chance to hang out. Please, I get the Monday Mojo. I like it because I like that. I think it's important. I know it's not directed at me as a business owner who provides services to financial advisors, but it's still something that I like to wake up to, right? I like that little kind of bolt of energy that you are very, very good at sharing with people. And please make sure that you go to the website and find out more. I know that you've lots of different ways that people can engage with you. There is a program within Stephanie's Limitless program that will solve your problem. So freaking just go there and hire her.
Oh,
So,
and I'm supposed to tell you, I'm so bad about this. You can follow me on social. I
oh
always
yeah.
forget
Well, oh
this.
dear God. Yes, they
Always
should
forget.
absolutely. Actually, I
Yeah.
think that's actually how I got the Monday Mojo, because I saw you posted on LinkedIn and I clicked on
Yeah.
something and then the Mojo shows up on my
Yeah.
Mondays. So, all right, Stephanie, listen, I appreciate you. Thank you for all that you do for our community. I know our community really thanks you. Thank you very much for your focus and dedication. And not just that, but your systematic approach based off of really great practice and data that has happened with you over the last, so many years that you've been working in financial services, and we really appreciate that. So, all right. So everybody,
Thank you,
listen,
Matt, as always.
yeah,
Thank you.
if you want to, after you worked with somebody like Stephanie, if you really do need to find a way to go ahead and amplify your voice and be your own loud and rise above the noise, please join our Pod Rocket Influence Academy. That's the greatest place for you to start. There's like 34 courses in there. You get access to office hours, which isn't what Stephanie does. We just have open a question time. It's not coaching. It's actually just us answering your questions, but you get 8 hours of those per month for under $200. So it is the greatest deal, my opinion, in financial services, for all of us to be able to support you. Plus, your team can also join so they can really learn how to do compliant content marketing. So for Stephanie and all of us here at ProudMouth, we'll see you on the other side of the mic very soon.